Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Community Ask the Expert session. My name is Shane and I'm delighted to be joined by Benjamin Niaulin, Microsoft Regional Director, MVP, MCT, Sharegate Canada, and Paolo Pialorsi, MCM MVP at PSS.com Italy, who will be talking to you today about Microsoft Teams. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. This is not like a webinar, as everybody knows. This is an Ask the Expert session. So just type your questions below the window if you're watching this on the page, and you can ask your questions. We're going to start at the top, and the first question that came into us, which was submitted to me via email, is as follows. Is there a graph API option, or will there be to support chats through a different interface? For instance, if you wanted to have a chat around a document in SharePoint or in a third-party product, could you make a comment outside of Teams? Have it added to Pacific channel and have the replies picked up and displayed all outside of Teams, but using Teams as the chat engine?
Okay, this is a graph-related question, so I will take it. As far as I know, in the beta endpoint of the Microsoft Graph, there are some APIs available to use chats, but as far as I can see, there is nothing to write a chat message. There are APIs to read what are the chat messages available. So you can do what you want to do right now, maybe in the future if they will add some more functionalities in that endpoint.
Okay.
And actually, I agree because I'm not a developer, but as a product company, we had to look for these solutions. And right now, as Paolo said, you can read the messages, but can't do anything further than that.
Okay.
Eventually, you can write messages in a channel. That's a plan B that you can consider, which is not exactly the same, but better than nothing.
Okay. Next question, and I'll just keep working my way down through the questions. And if you have a question, just type it in. If I rename a channel in Teams, why is the connected folder in Documents on the Teams site not renamed? And if I then rename that folder, it loses the connection.
Yep, this is a known issue, and it's being worked on and should be released eventually. The only thing that we know right now is that it's in development by Microsoft Teams product team. So I guess we couldn't call it a bug, although it is by design for now, and it will be something that's being solved in the coming, hopefully, weeks, maybe months. They never tell us the due dates, the release dates.
Okay. Paolo and Todd?
No? Perfect.
Nope. Okay. Okay, next question. Trialing live events, not having an option to capture user details in quick form, guest user is disappointing as attendee report is useless for anonymous users. I suppose they're looking for information on this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from my knowledge at least, there's no workaround. There's hacks. There's putting Microsoft Forms inside of the chat when the meeting is happening, and hopefully they answer it. But other than that, there's not to my knowledge, at the very least, I didn't see any solution for this. It's how it is.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll knock that one off as answered. Do you have tips to bring structure to Teams? How do you handle the information overload?
I like to understand if structure, it means to provision the structure and the information architecture of a team, or if it is bring people to teams in order to make them use it.
Yeah, my understanding of the question seems like because it's information overload, I think they mean I have tons of teams, they're all in my teams list. How do I bring the organizational structure to this? But we can answer both questions. At the very least, there's no easy answer. I find all of the structure in terms of logical information is happening in SharePoint. So what I mean by that is we know that Teams is a product that sits on top of other products. So it's the membership provider behind the scenes called Office 365 Groups, which has the membership there. And then Teams and the SharePoint site and everything else is connected to the Office 365 group. So Teams essentially is just technically the chat tool. So the structure, there isn't anything at the chat level. There's just a bunch of chat rooms that you have access to. The only product that provides some kind of layer of organizational structure around your teams will be the SharePoint sites that the teams are associated to. So you'll be able to create hub sites. You'll be able to link those hub sites to your home site, obviously, and then team sites will be able to be connected to your hub site, have mega menus, navigation structure, logical structure that represents your business units, your divisions, and so on. But on the Microsoft Teams front, all you will see is a list of Microsoft Teams. So if that was your question, unfortunately, the answer is to make sure that you have prepared a logical information plan or in the SharePoint side of things. Paolo, do you want to cover the other side, or?
Why not? Because maybe it's useful as well if someone wants to do the actual provisioning of the information architecture, for example, in Teams, like, for example, creating a new team with a predefined set of channels, tabs, and stuff like that. Well, there are at least two options out there. One is to use at the low level the Microsoft Graph, and using the Microsoft Graph API, you can do that kind of stuff. Or you can eventually use the PnP provisioning engine, through which you can do almost the same, but providing a more declarative input, which will be an XML file in which you declare what are the tabs, what are the channels, and what is the content that you want to provision, automatically provision in a team when you create it or when you want to update its structure, including eventually all of the settings of the team. I mean, the guest settings, member settings, and stuff like that. So that's it.
Super. Wow. Okay. On to the next question. How is the status on support security group? Do you know more? See Office 365 roadmap, feature ID 5002.
Yeah, we don't have access to release dates, and to be transparent, Microsoft doesn't have access often to their release dates either. When we build product, often it's on our roadmap. We're targeting a certain moment in the year, such as Ignite or the SharePoint conference or ESPC, and they do their best to try and release it for those moments. So release dates is very hard. To be clear with everybody listening, we're talking about group-driven membership in Office 365 groups. The current issue right now is that you have to add your users manually, one by one, after your Office 365 group is created. And the question is, there's something in the roadmap that says I can put a security group inside of my Office 365 group or another group, and the membership is automatically driven. And that's on the roadmap. It's in development, but we don't know, to be honest. There's no communication of release dates, at least that I know and that I can share.
Okay. Okay. Up next is how to hide who is leaving or joining a team.
You can't.
As far as I know, you can't. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Short and sweet answer.
Why,
there.
by the way? I mean, do you want to be a big brother watching other people without letting them know? Why? I mean.
Okay.
I think just to be fair, there's large teams that I've seen, so lots of people inside a Microsoft Teams, and they're having conversations in the general channel, for example, and then you constantly see the ins and outs of other people that is not information, as some people have requested perhaps putting it in a different location, not necessarily in the chat, maybe in an information pane on the side thing or something. At the moment, it is what it is. I have heard talks at some point of maybe having a different experience for this, but today there's nothing you can do. This is what you have, and this is how it works.
Okay. Okay. Brilliant. Privacy settings for a channel.
Which maybe means having private channels. I don't know how to read through the lines, but they are coming. So.
Okay. So maybe
I think there's another question somewhere around it, so I'll tag along with it with the private channels right away. People are asking, like, what can I tell my customers about how private channels work, and when is it coming? And it's been waiting for a long time.
Yeah.
Personally, this is really my personal opinion. I've seen some of how it's going to work, and it might still change, so I don't want to talk too much about what you can tell to your customers or what you can start preparing for in terms of private channels. My only recommendation to everyone in the audience or watching this later is when you're going to get private channels, pay close attention to how it works in terms of architecture and behind the scenes. Make sure that you are aware of how it works and how it can impact your environment beyond just setting a channel to private. So be aware, be conscious, and pay close attention. For now, they don't exist. We've been waiting, and we'll see hopefully soon.
Yeah, based on what I know, I totally agree with you, but I think we cannot share more.
Okay, and hopefully Thomas, who asked that question, he can come back in with further clarification if needs be. Okay, can the deployment of pre-built teams be automated?
Well, I think we somehow already answered this question, because before I said that, yes, you can automate the provisioning of teams. So you can create a pre-built team. Actually, from an end user perspective, the team will show up like an empty team, a fresh new team, and then through APIs, whether using Graph or PMP, you will be able to add more channels, tabs, apps, and stuff like that. So people will be able to see that the team is growing while you are provisioning that team. Eventually, you can add the users and the membership at the very end of the process, just to avoid people being able to see a team that grows in front of their face while they are waiting for the provisioning. But aside from that, yeah, you can do that using Graph or PMP. Yeah.
Okay, Benjamin, you okay to move on?
Me, developer stuff is not for me, so I agree with everything you said.
And the other way around for me, so.
Okay, brilliant. Next question, is it possible to share a streams video within the Teams chat so it shows the actual video as it does with Yammer?
The answer is no. Not for now. I think there's not even a roadmap item. There's a user voice request, and it's under review. So they're considering it, but maybe they need more votes. So I encourage you to go to the Microsoft Teams user voice and look for that. At the moment, there's one workaround where you can create a channel, in a tab, sorry, not a channel, a tab in your Microsoft Teams. And if you create a tab using the Streams connector or app, you'll be able to put the video embedded directly in the tab itself. However, as part of conversation goes, because of how it's been built and how it is today, you will just get it as a hyperlink, as a resource that people can click on and go to Microsoft Stream to view it. So short answer, no, there's nothing you can do today. Long answer, you can use a tab and you can start voting and use a voice.
Okay, super. Next question, how can I move a doc library from one team site to another? The library has many custom, custom columns, multiple views, and includes content that also must be moved.
There is a product that comes to my mind, but I don't know if I can say the name.
Yeah, so it almost feels like somebody prepared this question for me, but it's not. So obviously, I'm going to do a disclaimer. I work for a vendor, a software vendor that does migrations and moves and copy. So take it as it is for the answer. The answer for out of the box, there isn't really a way to copy document libraries. You can copy files. Microsoft has copy files, but it's not going to keep your column. It's going to do its best to copy the metadata. It's not perfect either. So you can move your files out of the box. But otherwise, I've heard of great tools like Sharegate, but there's also other vendors that do that as well, of course. There's nothing out of the box for you. There's vendors that do migrations that will be able to support this scenario.
And let me just add, for the sake of completeness and not get me wrong, Ben, that if you want, you can also do that if it is just a matter of moving one document library with its structure and eventually its content. You can eventually consider using the PMP provisioning engine again, because we do the extraction and the creation on the information architecture of a list or a library. So you are covered from the custom fields point of view. And from the content point of view, actually, we support uploading content that you configure, but pretty soon, sorry, Ben, we will also support extracting content so that you can eventually do that using a bunch of PowerShell and the provisioning engine. Of course, using a real product is totally different story, I know, but
and
in case you want to use an open source project.
What is a vendor but custom code already done and shipped? So of course, by having vendors, there's possibilities to do it via the SharePoint framework and just custom coding the whole thing yourself as well. So that's your options. Nothing out of the box with the U.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So this person, if they're interested, should reach out, Benjamin, maybe to Sharegate, contact them. I said it for you. There you go. It'll save you having to say it. Okay, moving on. Are there any examples of third parties integrating with teams other than by adding a new tab?
Other than adding, sorry, I missed that one.
Are there any examples of third parties integrating with teams other than by adding a new tab?
There's tons, to be honest. I think it's more important to start with what you need to do in the organization, what's the challenge that you're trying to fix, rather than starting from cool integrations that exist, because there's Teams bots, but it depends what your problem is. So if you have a challenge around Teams governance, there's a number of products that do Teams governance, and then they integrate themselves via Teams bots, via connectors inside of the chat directly, or they have their own app separately. But then if your challenge is something else, such as an intranet or getting started quickly in Teams, then you have vendors that create their own Teams templates so that when you want to create a new project, you have this project template that really comes with a set of channels, with a set of bots, with a set of X, Y, Z. So I think there's tons of cool integrations. Paolo probably has a list that he would like to share as well. I would say just start with what you need to accomplish, and then you'll find cool integrations. But perhaps your question is more about getting ideas of what you can do, and I think that maybe Paolo has some insights there.
Well, actually, I do agree with what you said. So from a developer perspective, the main extensibility points are actually tabs or building team bots to integrate with the channel. And usually those are the most developed customizations for teams, especially thinking about tabs. Nowadays, you can do that using the SharePoint framework, which makes really simple and easy to build a customization. So maybe that's why also the person asking this question was looking for something else and not only tabs, because most of the customizations nowadays are easily doable using a custom tab and the SharePoint framework. If you want to develop a bit more, yes, you can use cards in the channel chats. You can use team bots or stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. The next question, is there any interesting examples of third-party integrations?
Sounds like the similar question to me, so I'll maintain the same answer. I can list vendors, but I think it's more important to start with what it is that you want to do, and then a quick search will find you the set of products that integrate. There's literally a ton, and it just depends in what.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question. How long does the publish process typically take to get an app into the Teams App Store? Is it days, weeks? And likewise, if you want to publish an app upgrade?
Oh, well, actually, I don't know how long does it take on average. I usually, to be fair, develop and prefer to develop solutions that I sideload in the customer tenant, because they are usually custom solutions, and those can be just deployed in the app catalog or in the team in which you want to have them, and they will become instantly available. If you are planning to sell a solution for Teams, yes, you have to go to the store, and actually I don't know the average time. I don't know if Benjamin is aware of that or not. But
we never went this way. In my experience, we've always created a tenant app that we got consented, and then we leverage access to Teams. But often at least from what we built and what my experience has been, it's often not just about teams for what we built. It's something we need access to multiple things. So we went through getting an app that we created that's consented by the tenant administrators, and then we leverage our access to Teams, but we'll also poke the graph for other things, and we'll also poke SharePoint for other things. So I don't have any experience with the delay of publishing a Teams app, unfortunately. Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I share the same viewpoint of Benjamin. Benjamin, usually when we develop custom solutions for customer, it is not just a custom solution for Teams or for SharePoint Online or for something else, but it's something which uses the whole ecosystem of Office 365 or Microsoft 365. And that's why you register the application in Azure AD. You use mainly the graph to access all of the services and the resources. And you provide the UI based on the real needs of the customer, maybe in a team tab, maybe in a web part in SharePoint Online. It really depends on the customization, but it's not just an app for Teams. It's something, don't get me wrong, but something more. So something which targets the whole ecosystem. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. How long does the, oh, that's the same question. I'll move on to the next one. I'll mark that one as answered. What will be your checklist for deciding between giving user a SharePoint team site or Microsoft Team channel for collaboration?
That's a huge question. I don't have a checklist, but I just want to get something first out there. It's not a competition. So every Microsoft Teams you create comes with a team site. So by giving them a Microsoft Teams, I'm giving them a team site. So there's no checklist one or the other. So the question perhaps is, when do I create a Microsoft Teams connected to Teams site, or when do I create a Teams site that's not connected to Teams? So I hope I'm being clearer on this in the way I'm saying it, but you can create a team site that's by itself or connected to an Office 365 group without Teams, or connected to an Office 365 group with Teams. There's three choices. And it's not about the checklist to the user requesting it. It's often, from my experience, been more about what is our organization currently trying to achieve, and then what milestones are we trying to achieve. So what I've seen is companies that have previously approached a portal solution. So they have history or an expertise with SharePoint or with intranet portals, or they're coming at it as we're doing an intranet. They'll go via the SharePoint side of things. And then later on, we'll do a second deployment of Microsoft Teams because it comes with its own set of challenges. But then there's another set of organizations that start Office 365 with Microsoft Teams and figure SharePoint afterwards. So it depends on the organization rollout plan, on the projects, on how they're going to deploy these technologies to help their work be better and more productive. But there's no checklist to give a user. The next thing perhaps, and then I'll let Paolo say his, but it's when to use what, which may be the true question behind it. How do I tell my end user when to use Teams and when to use SharePoint? And for me, the answer is Teams is a chat tool, and it's the ability to bring a quick access, almost like a shortcut, to the other tools that that group of people is using. But the relevancy of the other tools is still there. So SharePoint is what Microsoft calls a content service. It is where you store content, like pages, like sharing information, files. You want to do workflows to automate your processes. And Teams is where the conversation happens. And it's also where you can bring that SharePoint document library directly to the Teams view so that you don't have to navigate all over your browser. I'll keep my answer at that. Paolo, what do you do?
Well, first of all, I totally agree with what you said. So they are not competing products, but they work together. You enumerated three options. I would add a fourth one, which is also that you can start from a SharePoint team site, and later on you may decide to connect that team site to a Office 365 group or to a team using an API, if you like, which every now and then could be somehow useful. And yes, as you said, I truly believe that if you have the need to store information in a repository which is structured with metadata, with custom information about your content, that's SharePoint. But of course, to improve the user experience, why not having a tab which will show that specific library or list in Teams, so that you, from an end user perspective, you will still have Teams as the main user interface for the end users. But in the backend, there will be SharePoint or any other service provided by the Office 365 ecosystem again, because the idea is to use Teams as the UI to access all the variety of services that we have, and not to use Teams excluding all of the other services.
Okay, a big question with an even bigger answer. There you go. So that's super. Hey guys, what is the best way to change the name of a Microsoft Teams in a way that new names is used everywhere, including OneNote, Planner, etc.?
There's no, from my experience, it's always going to be messy. You can change the name directly in Teams, or you can do it in the admin center. You have PowerShell commandlets, but you have to wait for a timer job, if you will. It's not a timer job, but it's easier to call it that comes and replicates the change in the other workloads, because it's not, Microsoft Teams is just the chat piece. It's connected to an Office 365 group, which acts as the central point for all the other products. So there's a delay. So that's the first part. But then there's also things that will never happen unless you go and change them. So if you want to change the alias of the email address for the Exchange mailbox that came with your Microsoft Teams, you'll have to go and do that with PowerShell. If you want to change the SharePoint URL that was generated after you change the Teams name, you'll have to go and do that. So I would say that everything in terms of display name is done automatically, but with a delay. And then there are still things that will not be done that you'll have to pay attention to and do if you really need them.
Yeah, it is so true that, for example, if you think about that from an architectural perspective, under the cover of Teams, there are Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Azure Active Directory. So when you apply any update on the settings of Teams, multiple services will have to be updated. Think about, for example, when you change the icon of a team or of an Office 365 group. It's not always automatically updated in SharePoint Online or in Teams on the other side, because there are some updates happening in the background, and you need to take this into account. It's a challenge, if you want, from a developer perspective, because whenever you have a solution which will update the icon or rename the display name or something like that, you will have to be aware that it will take a while to keep all of the backend services in sync. And that's the only way it can be done, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. How can I have control of the contents that are created by users and take control of SharePoint usage and external sharing? Is it possible to block these activities?
Not sure I understood. Let me just grab the question very quick.
How can I have control of the contents that are created by users and take control of SharePoint usage and external sharing?
There are some out-of-the-box services in the Office 365 offering to control external sharing and content, which you can leverage in SharePoint or in Teams or in the whole Office 365. From a SharePoint point of view specifically, I don't know if it is the actual goal of the person asking this question, but you can also think about using webhooks, for example, to do monitoring of what is happening in your SharePoint libraries and lists. But I don't know if the questions were more related on what people do create, update in SharePoint, or more generally related to content in Teams or file sharing of content wherever it is. I don't know, but
yeah, same.
Okay.
The only advice I can say is you can't really control what users create, but there's maybe some custom solutions, as Paolo was mentioning, that allows you to navigate a bit around it. If people have access, especially if they're a group member or a Teams member, they have full access to Teams, to SharePoint, they have full access. Second part about external sharing, there's tons of settings around external sharing that you have control over as you wish and desire, but you got to be careful. Are you adding the external person as a team member or as in part of the group, or you're adding the external person as a person in SharePoint, which is still a separate thing. So the external person can be only having access to SharePoint, or they can be a member of the group or the team and have access full to the SharePoint. So tons of controls, but feel free to reach out to us if you want to follow up to that question.
Okay, great. And thanks for that offer as well, Benjamin. The next question is there a best way to structure teams? I think we've already touched on that one, so I'll move on. What is the simplest way to add a new button on the left navigation pane of Team in order to just add a URL or a web page?
That's a static tab, if I'm not mistaken, right, Benjamin? So
yeah, I think he means like you know, you have activity, then you have like in the left pane. There's those little squares in the navigation. I know it can definitely be done. I know it's easy because we've done it in the past. I've seen other vendors do it as well. I'm not the developer, so I'm not exactly sure. It just
I think, for example, using the App Studio for Teams, you should be able to create a package for an app that will show up in that area. That's at least a way to do that. Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
And if it's not clear what that is, the Teams App Studio is an app that you can add in Teams. So if you go to the Teams App Store while you're in it, you'll see something called the App Studio, and you can add it, and you'll be able to do what you got to do there. Great documentation.
Yeah, using the App Studio, you can basically create the manifest of an app that you can later on install in any target team to use it, basically. And it can be an app that will simply refer to an external page or something more complex, depending on what you want to do. Yeah.
Okay, the next question is, kept receiving error while accessing the video in Chrome. I think this is actually just in relation to accessing this video. So although it's been live streamed, it'll be available in YouTube afterwards. Okay, private part of a channel. Let's say you have some information meant internal members and publish other info for customers, other part of same channel.
That sounds like private channels. They're coming out soon. So the concept of a private channel is to be able to give restricted access to a certain list of people that already are in the Teams membership and give them access to the channel. And within the channel, so far, there's no concept coming up. So you'll be able to create a channel and you'll be able to have a different security on it. So that's called private channels. We've been waiting for it. It's on the roadmap, should be coming out very soon. That will help you with your question, I think.
Okay, brilliant. Is there a content search API for Teams like it is in Graph API for, excuse me, for OneDrive, e.g. look for planner tasks and attachments within a team?
I don't have an API that comes in my mind to make a search just on Teams, to be fair, thinking about what we have in Graph. I can eventually double check if there is something new in the beta endpoint, but
my understanding, and then it depends what the question is, right? When I think of content search, I think of the e-discovery features or the security center. So content search in that sense will be limited to the Teams container mostly right now. And then as mentioned by Paolo earlier, there's an API for Teams messages that allows you to read messages. But that's it. Then you'll have
not to search them. No. And actually, if you want to search content, assuming that content could be documents, those are stored in SharePoint. So you have the search APIs of SharePoint to do that. So if you want to search messages in channels, no, I just double checked. I don't see any new API in the beta endpoint to do that. So maybe you just target your channel and search for that, or you use the discovery functionalities. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then the last question here is in relation to private channels again, but I know you've touched on that multiple times. So there we go. That's all the questions, guys, at the moment for our Ask the Expert session. Benjamin, Paolo, thank you so much for taking the time today and taking the time out. On behalf of the ESPC community, it's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
One final thing, because I've had the privilege of one more thing. I've had the privilege of seeing you guys talk and listen to your sessions, and I know you're absolute experts in your area. And this is going to be live, so at ESPC 19, you will literally be able to walk up to Benjamin or Paolo and literally ask them these exact questions. What would you say, guys, to anyone that's just kind of just not 100% sure about coming to ESPC 19? What would you say?
Well, ESPC 2019 is for sure a place to be if you are an European, or even if you are not. If you want to being able to meet a lot of technical experts and to meet the whole community of Office 365 and Azure. I would say not only Office 365 anymore, but also Azure folks working in the 365 and Azure area. So,
yeah, I mean, ESPC is coming shortly after Ignite, and Ignite, there's a lot of announcements, there's a lot of things moving around, but it's also 25,000 people. It's a bit chaotic. It's hard to be able to get the answers to your question. ESPC is immediately after or soon after, and you still have access to the Microsoft product team who will be showing up to do some sessions. There's some of the great speakers that are going to be there as well, which allows a lot more flow of conversation that allows your questions to be answered and be a little bit more focused on Office 365, SharePoint, and Azure. So definitely recommend, if you're not sure about it, ESPC has been a great conference for the many past years. For myself, whether it's on the Expo Hall and the conversations with the vendors, the insights, but also the speakers, Microsoft there, and the closer access that we can get, especially around all these announcements, and there's going to be a lot of announcements. So I think it's a great place to be and a lot more access to the answers that you need.
Brilliant. Guys, can we see you all in a couple of weeks? We'll see you in Prague from the 2nd to the 5th of December. Looking forward to it.
See you soon.
Brilliant.
Bye.
Benjamin, Paolo, thank you so much. An absolute pleasure, as always, to have you help out. Okay, everybody, that is it for today on the Ask the Expert session. We're actually having a webinar tomorrow, so check out sharepointeurope.com should you be interested in attending that, and all details. Again, a massive thank you to the guys over here, and Benjamin, Paolo, take care, and everybody else, thank you for joining us today. Bye-bye.